is not because of the elevation. So let's get started. This is the first time that I am sharing this story, as I didn't feel ready to tell anyone until this point. I had never believed in the paranormal or anything like that until that fateful day 7 years ago. I used to be one of those people who was always up for an adventure. I was never in a long-term relationship, as I could never stay in one place for too long. I was young and stupid and believed I was invincible. I look back on what I was like back then, and I wish that I could punch my younger self. I was in a pub in Ireland back in Christmas 2013 when a family friend walked up and started talking away. He was obviously drunk as a skunk and kept slurring his words. He kept bragging about how he had climbed Mount Everest a few years ago. I gazed down at his round belly and knew that part of his life was long over. The idea of climbing Mount Everest stuck in my head over the next few months. I began to train myself and climbed all of the mountains that I could in Ireland. They are only tiny little things, so it wasn't that hard. I eventually believed that I was fit enough to climb Everest and organized flights to get there. I had a lot of savings and did not care about the cost. I remember the first time I looked up at the mass that was Mount Everest. It was as beautiful as it was terrifying. A small part of me at the time wanted to turn around and flee, but the arrogance of youth overruled common sense. There were a few other climbers who were going up at the same time, and we quickly formed into a tight-knit group. There were Kat and AJ and a married couple from America who loved to experience new things. There was also an English couple, Greg and Barry, who took on the role of the parental figures. There were a couple of other people with us, but none of them are relevant to the story. The climb itself was long and difficult. I had never experienced such hardship in my life. I almost quit on a number of occasions, but the group kept me going. They helped me overcome any fear or doubt that was going on inside my head and kept my spirits high. The only time that we grew quiet is when we passed the body of a climber who had failed in their attempt to climb the mountain. A number of our group had given up and we were slowly reaching the summit. The guide told us we were maybe 2 days away from the top. He kept trying to make us walk slower, but we were in high spirits and wanted to press on. I could see fear in his eyes at times, but dismissed it as me being paranoid. We reached the camp nearest the summit and prepared to rest for a few hours. I was surprised to discover it was April Fool's Day and decided to play a couple of pranks on the others later. We gathered up our equipment and were ready to finish our journey. Our guide refused to let us move and pleaded with us to leave it for one more day. I could see the concern on everyone's faces, but I had put too much effort into this and wanted to finally finish what I had started. I convinced the others to come with me, and we set off without our guide. The next few hours were probably the hardest we had since we started this. It was a constant effort to keep ourselves going and not give up. I had a weird feeling that someone was watching me and kept noticing small stuff moving out of the corner of my eye. The mood in the group was very tense, and we were all freaked out. Our mood vastly improved as we finally reached the top and gazed around at the beautiful panoramic views that were in all directions. I couldn't wipe the smile off of my face, and I ignored the alarm bells that were going off in my head. My brain was trying to warn me about something, but I was too happy to care. My joy quickly evaporated as Kat let out a scream of terror. I spun around to to see her standing there gazing down at her feet. It took me a few moments to realize what she was staring at. There was a hand coming out of the ground that was now latched onto her leg. Before any of us could react, whatever it was holding onto her began to pull her downward. We rushed to help and grabbed onto her arms, but whatever was pulling her was incredibly strong. Her body began to twist and break as it was forcefully dragged. It seemed like an eternity for her body to disappear, but it was really only a matter of seconds. We all stood there in shock until AJ let out an animal-like scream and began desperately digging at the ground in an attempt to reach her body. None of the rest of us knew how to react, and we were looking at each other in hopes that someone would come up with an idea. We were still standing like this when I noticed other people coming towards us. I felt relief surge through me as they could help us retrieve Kat's body. I tried to rush to them to get help, but my body refused to move. I felt my blood run cold as the other group got closer. Their bodies were blue, and I recognized some of them as the dead climbers we had passed earlier. Greg was the first to scream as the group started their attack. AJ didn't even recognize they were here before they overwhelmed him. They began to rip all of his equipment off and then tore off his warm clothing. One of them shoved his hand into his chest, and I watched as they ripped out his still beating heart. Hands shot out of the ground and dragged his body beneath the surface. Greg and Barry were now standing back to back and were desperately trying to hold back the dead climbers who were circling them and waiting to pounce. The climbers suddenly all attacked at once, and Barry and Greg were immediately trapped beneath a wall of bodies. Their screams were quickly cut off as the dead climbers ripped out their hearts. I now stood alone with the dead climbers all around me. They gazed at me with their frozen eyes and waited. I don't know what came over me at the time, but I just reacted, and it definitely saved my life. I grabbed two of the ice axes we had used to climb and just charged at one of them that blocked the way. I managed to knock him out of the way, but felt arms latch on to me to attempt to stop me. I used the axes and quickly fought off any of them that came close. They moved back and let me pass, but I was still wary about them trying anything. I can barely remember the climb down to the camp. I could feel eyes on me the whole time as they watched me leave. I finally reached the camp, and the guide wasn't surprised that I was alone. He just gazed at me with annoyance on his face and told me that we should have listened to him. He sat me down and explained that there is a curse on this mountain, and every 7 years the dead rise for one day and will kill anyone that gets in their way. I lost 3 of my toes to frostbite on the descent and have become almost like a hermit in the last few years. I know that 7 years have passed, and I beg you to stay away from Mount Everest. There is more to fear from the mountain than just the snow and ice. So I hope that you all enjoyed that story. I do want to apologize if it seems as though there have been a lot of cuts in this video. I think I'm going to have to figure out a different recording schedule because I am not kidding you. Every 2 or 3 minutes, a plane has been flying overhead. In fact, there's one right now I can hear. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to end this video here. I hope that you all are well. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it was somewhat relaxing. And I will see you soon in a new video. Bye.